We were talking about this yesterday. What would be a, no chance you're making a move, deal breaker type of behavior at a dinner? Because if they're having this dinner with Cam Ward over the weekend, is there anything, Brady, if you were out to some sort of a dinner like this, to where somebody could do that would be like, oh, even though they're a great player or a great person or a potential great hire, that's a deal breaker? Any restaurant behavior that you would look at and go, F this, I don't want any part of this guy?
So when I was coming out as a prospect, the Tampa Bay Bucks, who then had the number 4 overall pick, and John Gruden was their head coach, they came to South Bend, and Gruden and Bruce Allen did a dinner, and they actually flew up a couple of their wide receivers, one of which I played with, Maurice Stovall. Great dude, like one of the all-time greatest teammates ever. Like if you were playing football with him, if you wanted to, if you were working in the corporate space, like Mosto is one of the greatest human beings ever. PA guy, there you go, LaVar. But you want him on your team, like he's that type of guy, right? So they fly up. And I believe it was him and Mark Clayton, and we were kind of sitting at dinner, and they were like, hey, have a beer or whatever. And at that point, like, you're trained and you're told, like, hey, like, yeah, be careful. You never know how they're going to be judged. Like, they're monitoring everything you do. And in retrospect, I probably could have had a beer or two and been fine. Like, Gruden and those guys would have been fine with that. But I was like, no, I'm good. We got to work out in early morning tomorrow and all that. And, you're kind of saying the things that, at the moment, obviously I meant that, but like I would have gladly had a beer with them too. It just wasn't really sure how to gauge that. And so we have dinner and we kind of go downstairs, and John Gruden and Bruce Allen stayed up in like this little private room they had rented. And so we go down. I'm like, hey, should I have had a beer with them or not? I'm like, I'm not sure how to judge that. And they're like, hey, man, just be on the lookout, man. He's like, you never know. He's like, it's hard to judge. Like, they asked us to come up here, and Maurice was like, man, I had no problem doing it. I get to come back, in the springtime and all that, see my alma mater. But he's like, but we also didn't know, like, if we said no, like, what does that mean for us? Like, it was one of those like involuntary workout type things that you typically have where you're like, it's involuntary, or, it's voluntary, they'll say, excuse me, but it's not. It's more involuntary. And so they were just like, nah, we think you made the right choice. I was like, okay, all right. But you never know. I mean, that's the hard thing is these dinners, they're really just trying to get to know who you are. And it's way more laid back because they've got to spend probably a couple hours with you, as opposed to others where it's like, you're not really sure. Like when I went to Washington, and I visited LaVar's old employer, the now Commandos. There was a group of prospects together. So it was kind of a mix of players together. And so they're more looking for how you intermingle or mix with the other guys, what you'd be like with a teammate with the other guys. And so it all depends on what the setup is for that specific dinner. But I'm sure they're going to try to pick Cam Ward's brain, how he operates, how he thinks, his background, his history, like the adversity he's been through, how he's fought through it. All those things are the questions he's going to have to answer.
Yeah.
You got to take into consideration the behavior of those franchise people as well. That's kind of like they treat it almost like it's a safe environment. It's like it's their created environment. So you see characteristic traits and you see behaviors from them where you could equally ask the same question to the prospect.
Yeah, like what if you didn't want to go there, and so you just sabotaged yourself and just got throttled at the dinner?
It's not even about sabotaging yourself. It's about, this is a getting to know one another process. And I could tell you honestly, when I did visit with the then Skins that ended up drafting me, now the Commanders, Dan Snyder was, he was vulgar, like with some of the things that he was saying. And it was kind of, it was like, I didn't really know how to handle it, Like I didn't really know how, not handle it. Handle it is a strong word. I didn't know how to comprehend how he was communicating.
What was he saying?
And it doesn't. I'm not going to get into all of that. But the idea of it was, it's like, dang, bruh, like you own this team. Like what? Like you said what? Like. But again, so it's not as though you got to, like, this whole perfect type of pristine type of movement. Like when they talk about the owner that was talking about Cam Newton, I want him to be, he's tall or he's beautiful, and I want him to be a fine man. Whatever it was he was using to describe. You don't remember the owner saying what he wanted Cam Newton, or he thought about how Cam Newton looked and how he wanted him to look? It was like, there was a sound bite of it.
Was this Jerry Richardson? Was he?
That's the older dude that passed. Did he pass away or whatever? He sold the team.
Lee, can you look that up? What did Jerry Richardson?
He said something about how he wanted him to look, and when I look at him, this is what I think and stuff like that. It was awkward, like to even hear it. But
it sounds very awkward. Sounds like super.
Y'all don't remember that?
No, I remember something of this sort, but it sounds like the old school draft, if you know what I mean. You know,
yeah, I could dig it.
Yeah.
I hate him.
But I could definitely dig it. But in the end,
skid on this.
Yikes! All I know is that so when you're talking about behavior that could be a turnoff to the organization and to the representatives, them guys are trying to like get in good with you. Like, hey man, what's going on? Like, depending on, like, I'm assuming, depending on them trying to be relatable to the player, they're gonna come at you a certain type of way, and that's I think that's pretty interesting because they might have misjudged me. I might look this way, but I do have very conservative ways of doing things, man. Don't come try to hit me up with the black hand shake. You know what I mean? Like the black hand, man. Like don't try to hit me with the soul brother hand. Like shake my hand, bro.
What do you mean by that?
Like, you know what I mean?
Oh, like the twist in the thumb and that.
If I know you and that's how we vibe, then that's how we vibe. But if I don't know you, like you shake my hand, I'll shake your hand. I'll look you in your eyes. We're on a business. This is business. This isn't personal. So don't come at me that way.
Is Dan Snyder flew me to Washington purely to hear the story that I told Coach Gibbs and those guys in the room about doing the bench press test at the combine. Like, that was the only reason they flew me in there to visit, I'm pretty sure. I mean, outside, again, of doing their due diligence. So, I'm
sure he wanted to look at you. I'm sure he wanted to look at you, too.
Well, I don't know. Might have been part of it. But
he wanted to get eyes on Brady Quinn.
The first time I got in there, I basically went right up to his office. And he was like, all right, so let me hear this story. I'm like, oh, all right. Yeah. Basically, I was being badgered to do the bench press test, and I called my agent, Tom Condon, who was like, hey, Brids, I think that'd be a bad idea. You could blow out your pec. You got a pro day the next week. I think that wouldn't be a very smart decision if you did that. And then I called Charlie Weiss, and Charlie Weiss goes, you're one dumb mother effer. If you're going to go out there and bench, for a smart kid, you could say some really dumb effing stuff sometimes. You dumb. And I was just like, okay, I think I don't even know if I said bye. I think I just hung up. And then I looked at the scout, and the scout goes, what'd he say? I go, he's not a fan either. I was like, but I'm going to do it because I'm also kind of, bored right now. We're not really doing much. So, and then that's how we did it. And that was, in essence, the story. And I'm like,
you went and benched.
Like, what's that?
You went and did the bench press for him?
He's a meathead.
Yes,
of course he did.
And some dress clothes?
It was all because the area scout who was taking us around was the Denver Broncos area scout. And he was like pumping me up the whole morning. I said, dude, I'm not doing this. Like, I'm not doing anything here this week. I've got a pro day next week. I'm going to try to do all I can at that. And I don't know if I told him about my knee or not, but I was like, hey, I'm not really 100%. So I'm just trying to, like,
dumb MFer.
Yeah. You dumb mother. For a smart kid, you can be pretty effing stupid sometimes. And I was just like, I've heard this before. Yeah. And so then I was like,
you heard it before?
Oh, bro. I got chewed out one time. We were coming from, and mind you, back then, you would go do a pregame mass at the Basilica at Notre Dame. And usually Father Doyle, who was our team chaplain, he would do it. And you'd get, you'd go on and you walk through this kind of procession that would snake to the stadium. And I remember, I think we were playing North Carolina, and it must have been my senior year. But it was one of those times where, like, the weather was turning. And Henry Scroop, who was our equipment manager, had asked me at some point in time, I don't know if it was Thursday or Friday, he's like, hey, what kind of socks would you want to wear for the game? And I had said to him, I go, I don't know. I don't really care. I mean, I don't know. I think the long, like, blue ones are pretty dope if that's what we're wearing. And I just kind of like in passing. And so we go to mass. We're walking through, like, you get through the crowd, you see family, friends, people, we're getting fired up. And we're like, yeah, let's go. We're getting in that locker room, kind of getting fired up before pregame warmups. And all I hear is someone grabs me like, hey, coach wants to see you. And I was like, okay. And so I walk into coach's office and he just sits down. He goes, who the F do you think you are? You all of a sudden are making decisions about our uniforms. You're the guy it's going to be. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what did I do? And so he probably lambasted me for about, I don't know, 3 minutes straight. He's like, no, don't talk. Don't say a word. Don't say an F word. And he just kind of cusses me out. So I kind of walk out and then I walk over to my locker and I'm like, oh, it had to have been the long socks. That's the only thing that can come to mind. So
he was growing you. That's all. He loved you. That's that love relationship there.
I don't know. I think sometimes what coach would do is, that was a team that we were expected to be. We wanted to be.
Dumb mother effer.
And I think he didn't want us to get too loose, even though our teams the last 2 years with him, we played our best football when we were loose. It was like the games when we were tight is when we didn't, and that was where like players have a better feel for that than coaches do oftentimes. Mm-hmm. But anyway, there was plenty of those conversations.
He had a feel for it though. When y'all played loose or whatever he was trying to achieve, he had a feel for it. It's interesting because if I were coaching you, I probably had the same relationship with you. It'd probably be the same exact way. That's his way of challenging you because chances are he's probably not smarter than you. So I'm not going to try to outsmart you. I'm just going to
he
challenge
is.
You.
He actually got into Notre Dame as a student, so he definitely is.
Well, I don't know, bro. You're a pretty smart dude. I don't know. Anyway, I'm just saying I would challenge you in those ways, but I would challenge you differently as well. Because I'd be sitting there like, I gotta check his pulse. Let me check your pulse. Because you could be too good for your own good sometimes. That's what that's what they say about them cats like how you are. They could be too good for their own self at times. So I would have challenged you the same exact way. Obviously it worked. Shouts out to Coach Weiss.
What up, Coach
Shouts out
Weiss?
to you wherever you at, y'all. Shouts out to you, you know what I mean, to all the coaches out there that challenge their guys to be more than what they even thought they could have been. Shouts out to all the coaches out there. Woo!